Well, hi there. It's 6:27. It's Thursday, June 27th, Journal 92, which means that it is T plus 86, 86 days after my transplant, which means that there are 14 days left, 15 actually, if you're counting, between now and the time I'm supposed to be released and head home just to visit back and forth to the hospital once a week and drive out here to Duarte. Um, which is all pretty exciting when you think about it, considering where I came from not that long ago. Seem to be doing well. Actually, there's fuzz on my head, which is kind of exciting. Can't really see it, but it's there. And my beard's coming in, which is really exciting for somebody who's worn a beard most of their adult life. Uh, Something happened today that was really interesting to me, at least. Um, Perhaps it'll be interesting for you as well. Um, and it happened during clinic or after clinic when it was decided that I would need a transfusion, which is something that I kind of figured and talked about over the last couple of days based upon the way I was feeling. Really glad that I got the transfusion today instead of Monday because that would have meant I would have been dragging all weekend. Um, and it's not a pleasant sense of being. But when I went to the when I went to have my blood drawn in the VAD room, I have no idea what the acronym stands for. I suppose I ought to find out after all of these years. But um, the young lady, the nurse that was taking care of me, pulled out two vials. Now, I've never taken two vials of blood. The lowest I've taken is three. The average I take on blood draw days is five. Um, been as many as 15 or more. Uh, so I questioned her. I said, I've been coming here a long time. Obviously, got my own plumbing, and I've never had just two vials of blood drawn. Could you please check and make sure that that was the case? And the reason for my concern was not necessarily that they weren't going to take enough blood. It was really very practical in the respect that tests that are being run when they do the complete uh, round of blood draw testing, that they do include tests for the anti-rejection drugs, among other things. And if they're not included, it really creates a hardship, not only for me, but for the nurses and the doctors. Because if I take my drugs, which I generally do after the blood draw, because I can't take them before because the medications will have a direct and almost instant impact on the readings. They're going to make decisions based upon what the readings are that aren't necessarily in my best interest or based on reality. So I come in the morning with instructions not to take those drugs, those anti-rejection drugs. So I don't take any of my meds until after the blood draw. Um, when I got the information about only two vials being drawn, I made a decision at that point um, not to take my meds until after I spoke to the nurse practitioner or the doctor. And what I was asking the nurse in the bathroom to do was to call and confirm with the doctor that there were only um, two vials of blood that were supposed to be drawn, and the testing based upon those two vials. And in essence, I was working as my own advocate at that point because I was alone in the VAD room with the technician. Um, and I can't overemphasize when you're dealing with medical issues how critically important it is that that you act as your own advocate and have someone with you who can act as another pair of eyes and ears, acting as an advocate as well. In any case, I couldn't get the technician to call. Um, And she took her 2 vials, and everything was fine. When we got in to see the nurse practitioner before the appointment began, I made a point of saying, hey, listen, they just drew 2 vials of blood, just 2 vials of blood, and insisted that that was all. I haven't taken my meds yet, but realistically, I'm pretty sure that you're going to want more blood than 2 vials because you're going to do more testing. It's going to go to a different part of the lab. And I know that time is of the essence because you and I can't talk about my condition until we have the results of the blood tests. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to need a transfusion today based upon the way I feel and the fact that I haven't had one in a couple of weeks. And it seems like I'm on a 2-week cycle, inching up ever so slightly towards normal. And as it turns out, we were right. Those tests had been ordered and somehow they had fallen off the computer. I don't really understand how that happens, but it somehow had happened, and we needed to get the blood drawn again, and an additional 3 vials of blood taken, which really is inefficient in a lot of different ways because it involves syringes filled with saline and syringes filled with heparin and cleaning carefully all of the plumbing and hardware that's associated with the PICC line. And it was interesting because I started to think about how much we are all creatures of habit, prisoners of the patterns that we create, and how much of our ability to function in the world is based on the assumptions that we make. And frankly, I'm not sure whether the patterns and the came first and the assumptions followed, or the assumptions came first and the patterns followed. But it's reasonable to assume that we can't function. None of us can function without these assumptions, some of which are pretty basic, like the sun rising in the east every morning. But it also occurred to me that much of what we know is the result of what we do, resulting from these habits and patterns and assumptions that we keep collecting. And how much of that is done by rote, how much of that's just done out of habit, and how dangerous that can be when we're held prisoner by that, and we're not able to see critical, sometimes life and death matters around us. Had I not questioned the tech in the bedroom, and had I not accepted her answer as the gospel truth, I wouldn't have said anything to my nurse practitioner. And what would have happened is I would normally have taken my meds, and she would have come and found me someplace in the hospital or on the grounds of the clinic and said, we need to draw more blood. And I would have said, well, I just took my meds, in which case many of the readings that they need would have been incorrect, would have been corrupted by a break in those patterns. And I'm sure that was part of what was going on with the technician in the bedroom. And, recognizing the impact it could have had on me and then extrapolating that out into the impact it could have had on other patients is a set of feelings that, sort of hovers anywhere between uncomfortable to terrifying. Because these are all matters, in my case particularly, these are all matters of life and death. So I think that it really behooves all of us to continue using whatever patterns and assumptions and habits we have that work for us, as long as, and I've said this before, as long as the groove we find ourselves in doesn't become a rut, doesn't get so deep and um, so completely overpowering everything else that we do, that we're incapable of doing anything else. Uh, something to think about. Something to think about. Um, in the meantime, as I start to feel better, based upon being able to work with, a unit of somebody else's blood. Thank you, whoever donated it. I truly appreciate it. It looks like I'm going to need it every couple of weeks, continuing on. But the crazy good news is that my platelet count was up in triple digits, the first time we've seen that since the transplant and since the chemo. So it was really encouraging. In any case, that's it for now, TTFN. Stay well, take care. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.